Wow. Hey, welcome. Welcome. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Appreciate everybody. Hope you're having a good Sabbath Saturday. So, before we begin, we're going to go so we can get a good crowd coming in. We're going to go ahead and get a little word here from our brother, Con Drop. All right. 432, the Drop Radio. A lot of people say, hey, why you be saying Hawa? Where you getting that from? Where you getting that from? Shout out to Con Drop, 432 The Drop Radio. Hold on, let me there you go. You guys can see it. 432 The Drop Radio. A mentor, a Morpheus. To me, learned a lot. Helped me, dodge the hijack a lot. So we're gonna get some words from the brother while we wait for others to join before we begin reading. Wow.
If we're talking about Hawa, the earlier form of Heya, and we're talking about he forms, he molds, or he shapes, and we're talking about Hawa, the creator, a highly prominent name is that of Hawa. It was the most ancient name for the creator and is easily identified from a Hebrew verb meaning to form or to mold or to shape. As time flowed on and the world fell apart, different people developed different names for the Father God, for the Creator, King of the gods, and for other superhuman personalities. The myths show common patterns, but the stories and relationships among the gods vary from place to place. The tribes remembered the same general arrangement, but estrangement led to different details. Oral deterioration and later literary embellishment eroded a solid core of social memory. You fell out of memory. The Most High said, I'll take my name from you. You're putting it back. We know that Hawa, the W, they didn't throw that in to throw you off. You got to get that on your own. You got to find that W, man, because you got to go way back to the paleo to find that W, because they're going to switch it to a V or they're going to switch it to a Y. So you always gonna find your paleo in the indigenous copper color, and that Y here got nothing to do with anything feminine, does it? It has everything to do with foundation when you're talking about a tent peg. When you're talking about the tent, security, the hook, when you're talking about the feather, this feather represents the foundation. This feather rocking in this indigenous drop, this indigenous truth represented a foundation. It represented a land. It represented a covenant. This feather represented a covenant. It represented a foundation. It represented a heart, a heartbeat, a vibration, the breath and the vibration. Hawa, Hawa. So let's get it, man. I'm just, man, really excited about this wonderful drop from this brother, man. I'm going to fall back, let it rock, man. And yeah, man, just all praise the creator, you know what I'm saying, for being able to bring all this together, man. The ha and the wa, to bring the wa, the tent peg, the foundation of the tent of the house. That's your law. That feather is representing your law. And the ha, the breath, ha, ha. They got you on the hey. They got you later on the a, which came to their E in their Yiddish. This is their spells. These are their spellings. How you get your ha and they get an E out of it. Now you get an E in the English. This ain't even English. This is Greek and Latin. You see how they switched the frequencies, completely blocked out all of your frequency. Daniel already switched it from the Picto. Now you got the modern Chaldean flame letters all the way to the Greek, to the Latin. Now you got your spelling, and you think that's just how it goes. Your A's and your B's are meaningless. Your D's and E's are meaningless. But did you know your E went all the way back to breath? Now you just write it as an E. So we got to be hijack free. We got to be in the right frequency, especially when we edify each other. You know what I'm saying, on something of this amount of pure water. When you say water, you're saying water. Wah. It's natural. It's hijack free. It has everything to do with security, securing the foundation, and the breath. The breath that what? The breath that who? Oh man. We're talking the breath. It's also a metaphor for spirit, or that which constitutes a person's life. What are you getting with life? The one who is existing, the existing. Hawa, earlier form of Heya. Hawa, the creator. You know what I'm saying? Then they said that people, just stop, stop remembering, man. The memory went out, but all these areas, man, with the Hawa. Again, when you see the H-U-A, it's Hawa. You don't pronounce Heya with the U-A. The U-As are always there for a reason. The Hawa. Hawa. This is New Zealand. This is Hawaii. Hawaii. This is Peru. Okina. Okaya. In Bolivia. Peru. Hawaii. Alright? It's all over us, man. So we're deciphering even the A, the O-U, Awa. Alright, so yeah, man. Again, you got all these docs. We're gonna get to this natural bylaw, man. You got all the drop. You even got some to form, to mold, break down Hiawatha. Remember Hiawatha and Huimak or Hawamak, which is the Moses connection. Hawa is the form found everywhere across the plain, a place named from very ancient times. He forms, he molds. So then you got your breath. Hawa. God exists. Then they put the Y on it to say, oh, okay, in the future, I shall do this and I shall do that. But if it's a Hawa, if it's the ancient name, it's the ancient name. They'll tell you that there's a reason to change it for a futureness of things. But again, we're only talking about the most ancient name from ancient times. And we're only talking about the breath and the feather. Without further ado, love to my family. Natural by law. Let's dig on it.
Said, I like to highlight the first word we're seeing right here, dealing with the ha, right? The ha. Now, I know it has an E with the H, and people might say hey, but hey or ha, all right? And I just want you guys to dig on that, because we have the symbology, right, or the letter that would indicate this sound, right next to it to the left. And as we see right here to the right, it means the breath, right? So when we say ha, right, it's just simply the breath. I mean, even as you sit there and you say it amongst yourself, right? Simply ha, right? That's the breath within itself. And I'll leave the link, of course, in the description box, for you to come across and, use for yourself.
Wow. Hey, make sure you guys subscribe to 432 the Drop Radio. Good big bro. And also Natural by Law. That's the name of the channel. All right. I think he got it in here. You can just go there. He got the links there, but you can just type Natural by Law. It should come up. I also got it on my subscription, so you can check my subscriptions and you'll find it there. Two good brothers. And I just wanted to go ahead and start out with that. A lot of people are like, what you getting that Hawa from, man? Like, hey, man, we got a lot of research We got a lot of videos behind us, and a lot of people come. A lot of people came and trolled right away today, and we ain't on that vibe today, man. We chilling, man. We coming with love, man. We coming on the behalf of the Most High, the Great Spirit. We're just trying to honor, trying to rest, trying to just breathe today. We're just trying to breathe and chill. We ain't trying to have anybody come disrespect or troll or try to question right now, especially if you're new to the channel, right? Because I know who's new to the channel, right? I know the names, right? So maybe it's just best sometimes to just listen or catch up. If you're 7 years behind, you got to try to catch up, especially if you're questioning, you know, if you're confused about something. I may be able to help you if you sit through my presentations. That's why I made my presentations with sources and everything so you can verify. So it's not just me talking. Yeah, so I can question, we can talk and text back and forth all day, but that's not going to convince you. And sometimes a lot of these questions, people act like they want to learn, but they're really just, really just questioning to debate. And I know. So hopefully, you get out of that vibe because I'm not on that vibe today. And you just, keep it cool in the chat and you won't get blocked. You won't get timed out, because we ain't for that nonsense right now. Shout out to 432 The Drop Radio. Make sure to subscribe and like all his videos. Check him out, check out what he's showing. Hey, it led me here, guys. It led me here. So, check out Natural by Law too. Check out all the good people I recommend. We're gonna get into this book a little bit. We've gotten into it before. I just want to read whole chapters and stuff and a lot more than just like little paragraphs. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. So yeah, don't ever think like I'm trying to control or anything. It's just we don't got time for that nonsense right now. You may be used to doing that on other channels and they entertain you with your clout chasing, but I don't do that here. Hey Benjamin, much love. Thank you for the donation. Appreciate it, man. All right. So again, we're gonna read this book real quick. Little parts here and there, belly flop to different areas. Thanks for being here. It says here the 10 tribes of Israel, or the true history of the North American Indians, showing that they are the descendants of these 10 tribes. Which ones? The ones of Israel, they're saying. And yeah, we don't generalize. So a lot of people get confused. We're not saying all. This is the true old world. We have many different nations here, so we don't generalize. I don't generalize, all right? But we're just gonna read some accounts, historic accounts of what people were saying about, their encounters with certain types of Indian tribes and nations, all right? So again, just breathe. If any of this, it conflicts you or it's controversial for you, just breathe. Oh, wow. Just breathe. Chill, relax, breathe. I ain't your enemy, yo. I ain't your enemy, okay? There's bigger fish to fry, and I'm not your enemy. The 10 tribes of Israel, or the true history of the North American Indians, showing that they are the descendants of these 10 tribes. This is by Timothy R. Jenkins, coming out of Springfield, Ohio. This is from 1883. All right, 1883. And we're gonna go right here, right to the beginning. It says, the North American Indian. The following is from J.J. Mombert's History of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, page 68. All right, and I've shown the actual source of this, being an extract from a letter written by William Penn to the Committee of the Free Society of Traders in London, England, 1683. He states of the origin of the North American Indian, I am ready to believe them of the Jewish race, so-called Jewish, right? Israelite, of the sons of Jacob. I mean of the stock of the 10 tribes, that's what he means. Yeah, specifically. And that for the following reasons. First, they were to go to a land not planted or known, which to be sure Asia and Africa were, if not Europe, and he that intended that extraordinary judgment upon them might make the passage not uneasy to them, as it is not impossible in itself from the easternmost part of Asia to the westernmost part of America. In the next place, I find them of the like countenance, and their children of so lively resemblance that a man would think himself in Duke's Place or Berry Street in London when he sees them. Why did he say that? Because those were so-called Jewish neighborhoods and mainly Sephardic Jewish people in those areas of London at that time. When remember, this is William Penn. This is a primary source. This is recorded. He said this. But this is not all. They agree in rites. They reckon by moons. They offer their first fruits. They have a kind of feast of tabernacles. They are said to lay their altar upon 12 stones. Their mourning, a year customs of women, with many other things that do not now occur. Okay? All right, so I also do, guys, if you guys can just stay on topic in the chat, because you will go off talking about other things that we're not even talking about, you know? So if you're new to my channel, I know it might be hard for you to not, to not just go off track and just start talking about random stuff, but we try to keep it in subject here, right? And hopefully, this is information that you can, acknowledge maybe you never heard before. This is a real sources. We're not just talking about beliefs here. So it's not about beliefs, okay, guys? It's not about beliefs. We ain't talking about beliefs in these presentations. I'm trying to show you real history. This ain't about religion or religious or religions. Reverend James, it says here, an ancient Israelite relic, our Aborigines. Reverend James S. Milligan writes from Argyle, New York, May 13, 1853, to a friend in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, right, having in possession of a very curious relic or facsimile of a relic of that ancient nation, the Israelites. They say the Jews. That's a made up word. Yeah, that's a made up word. We already know. Check out my Chasar series. I take the liberty of addressing you in reference to it, in order that I and others may have the benefit for your opinion concerning it. That to which I refer is a facsimile in Block 10 of a silver coin found last summer in Michigan, about 20 miles from Detroit, 2 feet under the surface of the earth. The coin is about the size of an American half-dollar, not so great in circumference but thicker. On one side is represented a censer with smoking incense with a Hebrew inscription, Jewish shekel. On the other, also in a Hebrew inscription, the Holy Jerusalem, with a representation of an olive tree, or perhaps palm tree, or perhaps palm tree. Okay, that's a big difference. Which one is it? Are we talking about olive tree or palm trees this whole time, huh? Because you can get oil from palm trees too. The original piece found is in possession of Dr. Duffield Detroit. It is not more than possible that this shekel of Israel was lost by Indians, and it is not another evidence that they are descendants of the 10 tribes. Here follows the remarks of his friend. The relic is plainly Israelitish. The facsimile represents accurately the silver shekel of Israel. It was worth 50 cents of our money. Our silver half-dollar is nearly a half-ounce of avoirdupois. The shekel of Israel was known in Persia. Which Persia? It is mentioned in Typhon's Anabasis. The relic having been discovered in Michigan, 20 miles west of Detroit, 2 feet underground, it must have been left there before the discovery of America by Columbus. Who could have left it there but one of the 10 tribes? If that be true, as Dr. Duffield supposes, it disposes of the theory of some learned man respecting the Hebrew alphabet, that it is Babylonian, brought back at the return of the captives under Cyrus, and that the letters are not those given by God to Moses at Horeb. It is the theory, however, of most modern Hebrew critics, as may be seen in the grammar Descendants, from whom Professor Stewart of Andover Seminary derives it and gives it in his Hebrew grammar. Those critics maintain that the ancient Hebrew alphabet is now found in the Samaritan. I have long maintained that this is a false theory. The Hebrew letters found engraven in the top rock at Ticonderoga, the sheens found in Georgia, and in the inscription on the shekel are evidences that those who were taken by Shalmaneser, this Genghis Khan, in the reign of Hoshea. Hoshea is Joshua. Did you guys know that? Before Jehoshua became Jehoshua, he was Hoshea. Hoshea. At least 721 years before Christ, and of course before the carrying into Babylon, before the reign of Jeconias, used the present form of Hebrew letter. Reverend J. Dodds, pastor of a congregation in western Pennsylvania and who takes an interest in the Hebrew language, tells me that there are inscriptions in the ruins of the city of Palenque in Central America that seems to confirm to Dr. Bodinot's theory, taught in his Star in the West. The compiler of this volume consulted a Jewish priest relating to those Hebrew words on the coin described above, and he gave the translation as we have given it. All right, we're going to continue. Says here, ancient antiquities. Reverend J.R. Wilson, D.D., a learned Hebrew scholar, writing in 1853 on Hebrew antiquities, gives the following. There are very learned works on Grecian and Latin antiquities. They are much used in schools. There are also very elaborate volumes on the antiquities of the Jews, such as Rous's Archaeologia and Lewis' Hebrews Antiquities. These works have fallen into disuse for nearly 150 years. They have all been intended to illustrate the ancient habits, manners, usages of the south of India after the cessation of the 10 tribes. There has been very little inquiry after the remnant of the 10 tribes since they were carried away by Shalmaneser in the reign of Hezekiah, more than 650 years before Christ. We have, however, great and precious promises to all the seed of Jacob, yet to be fulfilled. And in this verse right here, you can interpret it. He gathered together the outcasts of Israel, Isaiah 11:12, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Four corners. Here the 10 tribes of outcasts are distinguished from the dispersed of Judah. That promise has never been fulfilled, but where are they? That they will be found does not admit of any reasonable doubt. In this age when men run to and fro, and knowledge of all kinds is increased, these long outcasts of Israel will no doubt be found. All right, that's from Daniel, I think Daniel 12:4. In the end days they will be found, There have been various conjectures as to where they are. Some of them seem probable, but none upon the whole very satisfactory. One theory of late has been held and brought before the public, accompanied with arguments which render it, as many think, almost certain. Dr. Elias Bodinot of New Jersey, the first president of the American Bible Society, published an 8th volume which he called The Star in the West. The name was suggested to the doctor by a learned work of a Christian traveler in the East, whose name was Buchanan. He had published some time before a book called The Star in the East, a very interesting work in which he states that he found in the south of Asia numerous descendants of the 10 tribes. The Star in the West ought to be read by every friend of the Israel of God. The readers of your publication would be interested by a statement of a few arguments in support of Dr. Boudinot's theory. First, a rabbi from beyond the Caspian Sea wrote to one of his friends remaining in the land of Israel that he and his brethren had determined to go in a body of a journey of 1 year and 6 months and go to a place where they never could be heard of again. His letter is found in the Apocrypha, which, though uninspired, is generally found to be good history. The king of Assyria, in the 6th year of Hezekiah, carried away Israel beyond the Caspian Sea, and the king of Assyria did carry away Israel unto Assyria and put them in Halah and Harbor by the river Gozan and in the cities of Medes, right? The river of the Medes is Gihon, which enters into the Caspian Sea on south through ancient Media. Peter the Great of Russia adopted the same policy with the Finlanders when he conquered them, planting them in the eastern outskirts of his empire. Now those Hebrews could not go south, for Hindustan was peopled by the descendants of Abraham many hundreds of years before, for they sent away the children of the concubines to the east country. Shinar was peopled, or Summer, that's how you say it, by the children of Keturah. So guys, I know the geography, remember they're going with the fake old world geography. Okay? Is Shinar Chaldea really all the way over there, or are we talking about the British Isles? Are we talking about Northeast America? Are we talking about Northwest America? Where are we really talking about? We're still digging on that hard. A lot of great videos out there, a lot of great brothers and sisters with videos on this, their thoughts on it and why they think so, the exact locations. But I just want to point out that, they're still going in this book with the old version of where they're putting all the old world's people, right? And the Holy Land and all that. But we already know that's in the Americas. Let's not get sidetracked. The whole valley of the Euphrates and Tigris was thickly settled by the Assyrians. Of course, there was no other way for the colony of Hebrews than towards the Bering Strait. Of course, towards the Bering Strait, you see? So this is what I'm saying. They're going with the whole Bering Strait thing. Again, this is a theory. Let me see. So that's one of the theories, right? And then they ended up in the Bering Strait. A second argument that the Tartars are descendants of the 10 tribes. The Tartars are related some way, but there's a deep research and understanding and discernment that go on. And if you guys go to 432 The Drop Radio, you guys watch the Prester John series, you'll see what I'm talking about, how they relate in the stories and timelines. Dr. Dashov, the Russian ambassador, told the writer 36 years ago that he knew that the Tartars were Hebrews. He said, "My family came from Tartary to European Russia 150 years ago. Our chiefs were called Nis or Nice. When I came to America and saw Indians, I asked how Tartars came here for. Said he, the Tartars in all their leading features are Hebrews. The names of the rivers, mountains, and towns in Tartary being disguised, Hebrews bear testimony of Mr. Dashov's testimony. Third, the names of the mountains, rivers, and tribes of our Indians are also disguised. Listen, Hebrew Mount Elias is 17,900 feet high at the north end of the Rocky Mountains and in the north latitude 60 degrees. That mountain must have been named in the remembrance of Elijah. Upon Mount Carmel in the west of Palestine, a little south of where the Kishon falls into the Mediterranean, Charlevoix, the French Jesuit who traveled from Canada to Louisiana about 20 years ago, did not go so far north, neither did Carver. If they had both gone so far, they would not probably have called Mount 10 by his name. But nothing could be more natural than that these exiled Hebrews should have called it a name which they almost venerated in the time of Christ. When we come farther south, the names of rivers are more clearly Hebrew. Great Garden is derived from a god, and Gen Garden, or Gen, Ohio, is Jehovah, Ohio, Owa, Owa, Ohio, Ohawa. What J and what V? What you talking about? Hey, Drop just broke that down, man. Dodge the hijack. Ohio is Hawa, pronounced without the points. Akokawa. Yogi or Geni is the same name. The old name was Ohiopo, which means Little Ohio. The Potawatomi Indians called the Mississippi Mishapawa, Awa, Hawa, which is plainly derived from Mesa, Mose, Misha, Moses, Mesa, Misha, Pawa, and Pawa. father, which means Father Moses. Hmm. The patience of the reader would be exhausted should the writer attempt to identify the Hebrew names with the 1/10 of American rivers. The names of tribes and towns are as clearly as of Hebrew origin. Now again, so-called Hebrew, we're talking about a mother tongue here. Yeah, that later, because a certain people did not participate in the building of the Tower of Babel, we're talking about Hebrew and his family and his people separated. So the Hebrewians or Hebrews, those that descend from Hebrew, maintained the mother tongue. So eventually, this mother tongue is what they're calling Hebrew. Remember, origin of Sanskrit, Gaelic, and many, many languages, so-called from Paleo Hebrew, right? Latin, Greek. It's a mother tongue here. So yeah, of course, many of these rivers, Indian tribal names and all that are from the mother tongue. So they're saying, very interesting stuff they're saying here. And we call it the father of waters, the father of waters. Kanawa is Guna Abba, right? Abba, father. The patience of the reader would be exhausted to read. Okay, so sorry, I read that already. So 1/10 of American rivers, he's saying, at least. The names of tribes and towns are clearly Hebrew origin. The Mandans from Man and Dan, meaning Dan. Other names of tribes are to the same effect, forth from the literature of the Indian tribes. If it may be called by that name, the writer has seen a paradigm of the Mohegan verb. The Reverend William Smith, a Presbyterian minister among the Indians who had finished a translation of the New Testament in the Mohegan language, told the writer that he had for years labored to make a paradigm of the Mohegan verb. At length it struck me that it was cast in the Hebrew mold, and I made this one, which I will show you. It was printed on a large sheet, and any Hebrew scholar would at once recognize the suffixes and affixes of the Hebrew Bible. At the time the writer heard this, Mr. Smith was in Albany, superintending the publication of the Mohegan Testament. Several years before that, the writer of this article had seen a grammar of the Chilean language, and the verb was cast in the Hebrew mold. No Hebrew scholar could doubt this. It may be said that Chile is South America. Very true, but let it be remembered on our side that Hebrew immigrants had been in America 500 years before Christ. And of course, the Mexicans are descendants of Hebrews. Now, are we talking about all Mexicans? Meshi, Khans, Meshi, Moshe, Moses, Meshi, Khans, priests, kings. Are they all, right? Let's not generalize, but yeah, many, many, many are. If it be true that the Chileans are, Dutch Breckenridge, who was secretary of the legation to Mexico, told the writer that the language of the Mexicans was a very jingling language, a great many consonants and few words, and that it resembles the language of the Tartars. Their usages indicate the same thing. First, they have a long festival in spring, the time of year the Jews keep their Passover. Second, many of the Indians, especially those of western Pennsylvania, 70 years ago did not eat of the sinew that shrank. Third, they make a tent and enter the tent to purify themselves. Right? We just heard about the tent and the wa, right? The tent, the wa, the secure breath, your secure breath, your foundation. Again, okay, so six, one tribe at least has a box in which a copy of parchment, which they keep most sacred. This the writer had from Mr. Shannon, a very respectable gentleman who said that after great persuasion they showed it to him. It was written in large letters with blue ink. Mr. Shannon was not a Hebrew scholar and did not know what language it was. 7. Inscriptions. The writer will speak in the first person, as is customary now. In going down Lake Champlain in December 1832, I was detained by an accident, which happened to the steamboat at Lake Ticonderoga. There I discovered near a small village Hebrew letters on the rocks. At first I thought they were the marks of feet upon the rocks, which Mr. Moore speaks of in the geography. But on reflection I saw that some were Hebrew sheens. They were large letters from 4 to 5 inches long and beautifully carved. They are engraved in hard trap rock, a quarter of an inch deep and a quarter of an inch wide in the thickest part, and then in beautifully curved hairlines. I found also Gimel Jod Heth in its oldest form, the Va, right, or the Wa, and the Ta. I did not count them, but presume to say that there were more than 100 near the outlet of Lake George. I found an anchor with 2 flukes. I found but 2 words, Shogugu, for family, the family of the Shu Heights. There are other inscriptions in Pennsylvania, on the rocks, on the route of the canal, I have heard. All right? So, well, let me finish here. It says, now all these facts render it probable that our Indians are the outcasts of Israel. It is hoped that our ministers in the West will enter into further investigation. All right. So, real quick, I guys want you to understand, if you're new, just so you guys can know. All right. You go to my playlist tab on my main page. All right. We have many videos. We got a whole playlist here called Biblical and Indigenous Tribes of America series. Look at this one 6 years ago. We got more con drop, a lot of con drop. We got some Age of Nasir. Check them out. Teach Me to Be Priestly. Like the amount of evidence and corroboration and facts, guys, that are undisputed to corroborate what we're reading today, that we already have gone over. It's just too much. It's so much that you would have to be practicing cognitive dissonance. All right, cognitive dissonance. Again, this ain't about religion. We're talking about real people. We're talking about real historical places, real historical biblical places. All right. If you're really into this and you had questions, I saw a lot of people when the video started had questions, then you would take the time to catch up. It's not just me, it's a lot of other good brothers videos here. But yeah, almost all my Hebrew Israelite related videos, historic ones, are in this playlist. Make sure to catch up if you had questions. After you catch up with all these videos and you still got questions and you want to talk to me, all you got to do is reach out. Reach out to me and we can conversate. Ain't no need for debating what we're reading today, or for you to think that you actually need to debate this. We're past debating and past believing. And that's why I say this ain't about beliefs, right? So what we're doing here is just adding more and more corroboration to what we already know. Yeah, you gotta understand, SP Mama, we're talking about, there's a difference between religion, you're talking about ministers, you're talking about religious people, religions and churches and temples, preaching. I'm not talking about that. Of course they're not gonna teach us, they're indoctrinated with beliefs. You can't just get stuck in the religious part of this, guys. But you'll be stuck in a belief in the wrong type of, the ones they want you to, a controlling belief. It's okay. It's okay, You're right on time. Everybody's right on time. Everything happens for a reason. There's a time for everything. You're meant to know this now. If you really care, you catch up. So, I didn't know you were reading that. So yeah, it says right here, as the ministers have failed to make any further investigations of the subject, the writer feels called upon to give the public all the information he has collected on this subject during the past 15 years. It says here, a relic. The following is from Alexander's Messenger, published many years ago in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A government officer stationed at Lake Superior at an early date, before any white settlers had invaded or Europeans had invaded that part of the country. After becoming pit with a number of Indian tribes found one tribe in possession of a copper tube, highly soldered, and when asked what it contained, they said they were not able to tell, but they had received it from their ancestors a long time ago, all right? From their ancestors, not from anybody coming from anywhere else, okay? The officer finally prevailed upon them to let him open the article, and when he did so, he found it filled with parchment, with inscriptions that he could not read, but by sending the parchment to Washington City, where it was examined by competent Hebrew scholars, it was declared to be part of the 5 books of Moses. All right? The Indians had that. Here we have another link in the chain proving that the Hebrews were here many years before the white man came to this continent, and that the present North American Indians are their descendants. All right, so again, seeing it in reverse, always making it all because they found something Hebrew related here. Oh, they had to have come from the other fake Holy Land, right? No, this is the true old world, guys. You gotta fix your orientation. This is Asia Major. This is India Superior. Check out the old maps. You gotta have the right orientation, and you can't be spinning on a ball. You're gonna be dizzy and confused. So right now he's gonna go into the so-called Jews of the Bible, right? And he goes on. He goes on and on and on. But we got a good chapter coming. Hold on. They discovers it. It was most likely the sons of Israel. Okay, we got some good chapters here. 1 second. He goes into the language, which we've gone over before a lot. All right. Make sure to get the book. I have this shared in my Patreon. If anybody's interested, I have all my the books on related to the Hebrew stuff and Israelite stuff in my Patreon. So go ahead and check it out if you're there. So again, he's just going over this. I think the next chapter. Yeah. So let's look at these words right here. So he's comparing English, Caribbean, Creeks, Mohegan, and Hebrew. Look at that, Creeks, Yehovah. Come on now. Yahweh. Come on now. I mean, we've shown so many examples of this. All right. Yeah. It's a long list if you really start breaking it down in the different books we've gone over. Yahweh, the great verse. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hello, Hawa. Hello, Hawa. Allah, Hawa. Allah, Hawa. Fale. Falak. Uh-oh. Same. Kenai, Kanan. Yeah. Hey, much love. Hold on, let me say. Hey, Susan, thank you. I didn't see that until now. Appreciate you. Thank you. Jacqueline, thank you. Appreciate you as well. And yeah, Jacqueline, yeah, thank you again. Appreciate you. All right, let's go to the next chapter. Gets pretty cool. So, the Indian traditions as received by their nations. As the Indian nation have not the assistance afforded by the means of writing and reading, they are obliged to have recourse to tradition, as do Kratz, Volume 2, 169, has justly observed, to preserve the remembrance of remarkable transactions or historical facts. And this tradition cannot be preserved but by frequent repetitions. Consequently, many of their young men are often employed in hearkening to the old and beloved men, narrating the history of their ancestors, which has thus been transmitted to them from generation. In order to preserve them pure and incorrupt, they are careful not to deliver them indifferently to all their young people, but only to those young men of whom they have the best opinion. Hey, millennials, welcome back. Welcome back to the membership. Thank you. They hold it as a certain fact, as delivered down from their ancestors, that their forefathers in very remote ages came from a far distant country by way of the west, where all the people were one color. One color is that what they really were saying? And that in process of time they moved eastward to their present settlement. This tradition is corroborated by a current report among them, related by the old Chickasaw Indians to our traders, that now about 100 years ago they came from Mexico. All right, didn't we get this the other day? The Chickasaw and Choctaw. Who was Chickasaw? That was a person, and Choctaw was two brothers. We got this the other day in a whole different book that was from their migration, legend, and stories. Some of the old Chickasaw nation, or as the Spaniards called them, Chichimecas, Chichimecas, when they were in Mexico in quest of their brethren as far north as the Aquata nation, above 130 miles above Natchez, on the southeast side of the Mississippi River. But through French policy, they were either killed or sent back so as to prevent their opening a brotherly intercourse with them, as they had proposed. It is also said that the Nahuatlalcas believed that they dwelt in another region before they settled in Mexico, that their forefathers wandered 8 years in search of it through a strict obedience to the commands of the Great Spirit, who ordered them to go in quest of new lands that had such particular marks as were made known to them, and they punctually obeyed the divine mandate, and by that means found out and settled the fertile country of Mexico. All right, so again, catch up to that playlist I showed you guys, the biblical one I have. We've gone over all these stories, all the traditions of when they arrived in Mexico, how they, fled their captivity, almost like, and they went into their promised land. And then from there, we also got them returning, a lot of them, right? Returning and also going on their pilgrimage back to another promised land, to the southeast, right? Where you are today. Our southern Indians have also a tradition among them which they firmly believe that of old time their ancestors lived beyond a great river, that 9 parts out of 10 of their nations passed over the river, but the remainder refused and stayed behind, that they had a king when they lived far in the west who left 2 sons, that one of them with a number of his people traveled a great way for many years till they came to Delaware River and settled there. That some years ago the king of the country from which they had immigrated sent a party in search of them. This was at that time the French were in possession of the country on the river Allegheny, that after seeking 6 years they found an Indian who led them to the Delaware towns, where they stayed 1 year, that the French sent a white man or a European with them on their return to bring back an account of their country, but they have never been heard of since. Hey, much love, millennials, thank you. It is said among their principal or beloved men that they have it handed down from their ancestors, that the book which the white or European people have was once theirs, that while they had it they prospered exceedingly, but that the European people bought it of them and learned many things from it, while the Indians lost their credit, offended the Great Spirit, and suffered exceedingly from the neighboring nations, that the Great Spirit took pity on them and directed them to this country, that on their way they came to a great river which they could not pass, when God dried up the waters, and they passed over dry shod. Are we just talking about the Gulf of Mexico when it used to go all the way up? We're talking about the real Red Sea. They also say that their forefathers were possessed of an extraordinary divine spirit by which they foretold future events and controlled the common course of nature. And this they transmitted to their offspring on conditions of their obeying the sacred laws. And they did by these means bring down showers of plenty on the dear people, but that this power for a long time past had entirely ceased. The reverend gentleman mentioned in the introduction, who had taken so much pains in the years 1764-65 to travel far westward to find Indians who had never seen a European man, informed the writer of these memoirs that far to the northwest of the Ohio he attended a party of Indians to a treaty with Indians from the west of the Mississippi. Here he found the people he was in search of. He conversed with their beloved man who had never before seen a European man by the assistance of 3 grades of interpreters. The Indian informed him that one of their most ancient traditions was that a great while ago they had a common father who lived toward the rising of the sun and governed the whole world, that all the European people's heads were under his feet, that he had 12 sons by whom he administered his government, that his authority was derived from the Great Spirit by virtue of some special gift from him, that the 12 sons behaved very bad and tyrannized over from him. All right, they fell off. Deuteronomy 28. What happened? That the 12 sons behaved very bad and tyrannized over the people, abusing their power to a great degree, so as to offend the Great Spirit exceedingly. Deuteronomy 28. That he being thus angry with them, suffered the European people to introduce spirituous liquors among them, made them drunk, stole the special gift of the Great Spirit from them, and by this means usurped the power over them. And ever since, the Indians' heads were under the European people's feet, but that they also had a tradition that the time would come when the Indians would regain the gift of the Great Spirit. All right, Hosea 3:5. From the European people, and with it their ancient power, when the European people's heads would again be under the Indians' feet, or the Vatican Holy Roman Empires under their feet. Hey, Millennial Siana. Yeah, Siana. Appreciate you. Thank you. Mr. Mackenzie, in his history of the fur trade and his journey through North America, by the lakes to the South Sea in the year, says that the Indians inform him that they had a tradition among them that they originally came from another country inhabited by wicked people and had traversed a great lake, which was narrow, shallow, and full of islands, where they had suffered great hardships and much misery, it being always winter, with ice and deep snows, at a place they called Coppermine River, where they made the first land. The ground was covered with copper, over which a body of earth had since been collected to the depth of a man's height. They believed also that in ancient times their ancestors had lived till their feet were worn out with walking and their throats with eating. They described a deluge when the water spread over the whole earth, excepting the highest mountain on top of which they were preserved. They also believed in a future judgment. Mackenzie's History, page 113. The Indians to the eastward say that previous to the European people coming into this country, their ancestors were in the habit of using circumcision, but latterly, not being able to assign any reason for so strange a practice, their young people insisted on its being abolished. Mackenzie says the same of the Indians he saw on his route, even at this day. History, page 34. Speaking of the nations of the slave and dog rib Indians, very far to the northwest, he says, whether circumcision be practiced among them, I cannot pretend to say, but the appearance of it was general among those I saw. The dog rib Indians live about 200 or 300 miles from the Straits of Kamchatka. Dr. Betty says in his journal of a visit he paid to the Indians on the Ohio about 120 years ago. We're talking about 120 years from 1883, so 1760s, right? That an old Christian Indian informed him that an old uncle of his who died about the year 1728 related to him several customs and traditions of former times, and among others, that circumcision was practiced among the Indians long ago, but their young men made a mock of it, brought it into disrepute, and so it came to be disused. Journal, page 89. Huh. The same Indians said that one tradition they had was that once the waters had overflowed all the land and drowned all the people then living, except a few who made a great canoe and were saved in it. Page 90. That while they were building it, they lost their language and could not understand one another. Tower of Babel. That while one perhaps called for a stick, another brought him a stone. And from that time, the Indians began to speak different languages. I told you there was a mother tongue, and only a certain amount of people were able to maintain that so-called mother tongue. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for tuning in and being here with me on this Saturday, on this Shabbat, reading along with me. Appreciate everybody in the chat and the live chat. Thank you. Thank you. Father Charlevoix, the French historian, informs us that the Hurons and Iroquois in that early day had a tradition among them that the first women came from heaven and had twins, and that the elder killed the younger. Huh, you hear that? An account, so she came from heaven, huh? In an account published in the year 1644 by a Dutch minister of the gospel in New York, giving an account of the Mohawks, he says, an old woman came to my house and told the family that her forefathers had told her that the Great Spirit once went out walking with his brother and that a dispute arose between them, and the Great Spirit killed his brother. This is plainly a confusion of the story of Cain and Abel. It is most likely from the ignorance of the minister in the idiom of the Indian language, misconstruing Cain being represented as a great man for the Great Spirit. All right, so maybe because, hey, maybe in their tradition, Cain is, something else. Many mistakes of this kind are frequently made. Mr. Adair, remember, Adair lived with the Indians for 40 years. He had a Choctaw wife and everything, who has written the history of the Indians and who deserves great credit for his industry in improving the very great uncommon opportunities he enjoyed, tells us that the southern Indians have a tradition that when they left their own native land, they brought with them a sanctified rod by order of an oracle, which they fixed every night in the ground. Listen, remember, this is how they traveled. We read this in the migration story of Chickasaw and Choctaw, right? When they were coming, they would put in that pole, and wherever it would lean, they would go that way in the morning until it stopped leaning. So this is what he's talking about. So they had this rod, right? By order of an oracle, which they fixed every night in the ground and were to remove from place to place on this continent towards the rising of the sun, till it budded in one night's time. That they obeyed the sacred oracle, and the miracle at last took place after they arrived on this side of the Mississippi, on the present land they possessed. This was the sole cause of their settling here, of fighting so firmly for their reputed holy land and holy things, and they may be buried with their beloved forefathers. This seems to be taken for Aaron's rod. Colonel James Smith, in his journal of events that happened while he was prisoner with the Caughnawaga Indians from 1755 to 1759, says they have a tradition that in the beginning of this continent, the angels, or heavenly inhabitants, as they call them, frequently visited the people and talked with their forefathers and gave direction how to pray and how to appease the great being when he was offended. Are you talking about dracons? They told them they were to offer sacrifice, burn tobacco, buffaloes and deer bones, etc., etc. The Ottawa says that there are two great beings that rule and govern the universe who are at war with each other. The one they call Maneto and the other Machemaneto. They say that Maneto is all kindness and love, and the other is an evil spirit that delights in doing mischief. Some say that they are equal in power. Others say that Maneto is the first great cause, and therefore must be all powerful and supreme, and ought to be adored and worshipped. Machemaneto ought to be rejected and despised. Hey, much love, Scion Train. Shalom, man. Much blessings. Thank you. Some of the Wyandots and Caughnawagas, Waga, profess to be Roman Catholics, but even these retain many of the notions of their ancestors. Those who reject the Roman Catholic religion hold that there is one great first cause, whom they call Owahio, that rules and governs the universe and takes care of all his creatures, rational and irrational, and gives them food in due season, and hears the prayers of all those who call upon him. Therefore, it is but just and reasonable to offer sacrifice to this great being and to do those things that are pleasing in his sight. A much love, Broderick Enoch and Eric'sPlace.com LLC for becoming members of the channel. Appreciate it. There's plenty of perks now, and you're gonna have plenty of perks coming. Private videos, members only chat. When we get a good number, we got for the real supporters or anybody that's just willing to do it. It doesn't mean because you don't pay, you're not support. I do know that, so that came out wrong. But I see all of you who's been here for years supporting. Thank you. And I appreciate those that become members. Just makes it a little easier along the way. Thank you. Appreciate it. But they widely differ in what is pleasing or displeasing to this great being. Some hold that following nature or their own propensities is the way to happiness. Others reject this opinion altogether and say that following their own propensities in this manner is neither the means of happiness or the way to please the deity. My friend Hikare Hanego said our happiness depends on our using our reason in order to suppress these evil dispositions. But when our propensities neither lead us to injure ourselves or others, we may with safety indulge them or even pursue them as the means of happiness. And that's on page 80. He's saying, Eric Mays, hey, you, thank you. Appreciate you for always being here. Thank you. Can any man read this short account of Indian traditions drawn from the tribes of various nations from the west to the east and from the south to the north, wholly separated from each other, written by different authors of the best characters, both for knowledge and integrity, possessing the best means of information, at various and distant times, without any possible communication with each other, and in one instance, from ocular and sensible demonstration, written on the spot in several instances, with the relators before them, and just suppose all this is either the effect of chance, accident, or design. So many of the same stories coming from different people, different tribes, different nations in America, different accounts from different primary sources of explorers, traders, all these people coming in, conquistadors, colonists, saying the same thing. Could all this just be a coincidence, an accident, or design from a love of the marvelous or a premeditated intention of deceiving and thereby ruining their own well established reputations? So that's one thing, right? When we get, what people say. Another thing is when we're finding the artifacts, right, in the mounds, Grave Creek stone, the Newark Holy stones, so many, all these inscriptions. We got the Los Lunas, a stone in New Mexico, the Ten Commandments. They're all over the Americas, Paleo Hebrew, Old World writings. We just got that recently, right, with the book In Plain Sight with Gloria Farley's great work, and epigraphy. What they're finding here, old world records in ancient America. So just reading a book like this, guys, is just more corroboration. He may not have all the research we have today. So even though in 1883 he knew what he was kind of talking about, even if he may be a little biased to it, he's showing you why he's saying it. He's giving you sources. He's putting it all together. He's telling you what. How could all this be coincidence? Hey, much love, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you very much. Always. Everybody, all my members in the chat, all the patrons, and all the people who've been following me for years, don't ever feel left out. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'm like, you're the ones holding me up, motivating me to keep going, because it's not easy. It's really not easy, but you guys have been helping me make it easier. So I appreciate you. Can any man read this short account of an Indian traditions drawn from the tribes of various nations from the west to the east and from the south to the north, wholly separated from each other, written by different authors of the best characters, both for knowledge and integrity, possessing the best means of information at various and distant times, without any possible communication with each other, and in one instance from ocular and sensible demonstration, written. Okay, I already read this, but I guess reading it again, you guys understand what I was saying. Sorry about that. I went up. So he's saying, yeah, how could that be? All these tales, it's not all just coincidence. Charlevoix was a clergyman of character who was with the Indians some years and traveled from Canada to the Mississippi in that early day. Adair lived 40 years entirely domesticated with the southern Indians and was a man of great learning and observation. And I also want to add, Sephardic Jewish origin, even though he was coming from either England or Ireland, his people, but they go back to Sephardic Jews, a lot of them, the Adairs. So they firsthand knew when they were seeing these practices being performed, the ceremonies and all that by the American Indians, they were like, wow, we're not just reading about it, we're seeing it. We're seeing them do it. It's not just in the Bible, it's not just in the Torah, it's not just religion, guys. Yeah, we don't do the separation thing here. Like, that's very, you know, and nobody knows who's who, right? Nobody can tell you, oh, I'm from this tribe, I'm from that tribe, you know. And what can really show if you are really from Yasharala or Israel is your actions and your nature today, your spirit. You show it. You show it right away. And that phrase, actions speak louder than words, is very true when it comes to this. So again, a deer lived for 40 years with them, So that's that primary source, and they try to dispute it. And even his wife was a Choctaw Indian. People say people had agendas, but he's just writing. He's telling you what he saw. Just before the Revolutionary War, he brought his manuscript to Elizabethtown, New Jersey. That's funny. Elizabethtown today is full of Costa Ricans, or Ticos. That's where the major migration of Costa Ricans are, in that area of New Jersey, around Elizabethtown, Union, and all that area. Side note, my fault. To William Livingston, Esquire, a neighbor of the writer, to have it examinated and corrected, which was prevented by troubles of a political nature just breaking out. The Reverend Mr. Brainerd was a man of remarkable piety, and missionary with the Crossweek Indians to his death. Dr. Edwards was eminent for his piety and learning or piety, and was intimately acquainted with the Indians from his youth. Dr. Betty was a clergyman of note and established character. Bartram was a man well known to the writer, and traveled the country to the southern Indians as a botanist, and was a man of considerable discernment, and had great means of knowledge. And Mackenzie, and the employment of the Northwest Company, an old trader, and the first adventurous explorer of the country, from the Lake of the Woods to the Southern Ocean. It is now asked, can any one carefully, and with deep reflection, consider and compare these traditions with the history of the 10 tribes of Israel, and the late discoveries of the Russians, Captain Cook and others in and about the peninsula of Kamchatka, and the northeast coast of Asia, and the opposite shores of America, of which little was before known by any civilized nation, in favor of these wandering nations being descended from some oriental nation of the old world, and most probably, all things considered, being the lost tribes of Israel. This is the true old world. Let us look into the late discoveries and compare them with the Indian traditions. The Kamchatka is a large peninsula in the northeast part of Asia. It is a mountainous country lying between 51 and 62 degrees of north latitude, and of course a very cold and frozen climate. No grain can be raised there, though some vegetables are. Skins and furs are their chief exports. The natives are wild as the country itself, and live on fish and sea animals with their reindeer. The islands in the sea. So again, this author is going to try to make all these so-called tribes that are he's saying are Hebrews and Israel coming from the Bering Strait. So this is where it's probably going right here. All right, Dodge the hijack, be ready. The natives of, okay, the islands in the sea, which separated from the northwest coast of America, are so numerous that the existence of an almost continued chain of them between the two continents is now rendered extremely probable. The principle of them, so this is what I'm saying, guys. We know that there was more portions of Asia and North America connected in ancient times. Like, this is part of Asia. That North America was part of Asia, guys. That is the farthest east. It is Asia Major. There is an Asia Minor. There's an Asia Major. Yeah, Asia Major. So we're gonna, let's see. I'm gonna dodge the hijack on the Bering Strait stuff, right? Monsieur Lepage Duprat, in the 2 volume of his History of Louisiana, page 120, informs us that, being exceedingly desirous to be informed of the origin of Indian natives, made every inquiry in his power, especially of the nation of the Natchez, one of the most intelligent among them. This is a warrior nation of soldiers. This is like a soldier tribe. They were soldiers of the Muskogee people. All he could learn from them was that they came from between the north and the sun setting. Being no way satisfied with this, he sought for one who bore the character of one of their wise men. He was happy enough to find one by the name of Moneac Tepe among the Jasus, a nation about 40 leagues from the Natchez. Okay, so that's not the Natchez, right? This man was remarkable. Remember, the Natchez, Choctaw, Chickasaw coming from Mexico. Now, any conjecture from there is that's conjecture. You gotta, you know. But they were coming from Mexico. This man was remarkable for his solid understanding, elevation of sentiments, and his name was given to him by his nation as expressive of the man, meaning the killer of pain and fatigue. His eager desire to see the country from whence his forefathers came, he obtained directions and set off. He went up the Mississippi, where he stayed a long time to learn the different languages of the nations he was to pass through. After long traveling, he came to the nation of the Otters, and by them was directed on his way till he reached the Southern Ocean. After being some time with the nations on the shores of the Great Sea, he proposed to proceed on his journey and join himself to some who inhabited more westwardly on the coast. They traveled a great way between the north and the southern setting when he arrived at the village of his fellow travelers, where he found the days long and the nights short. He was here advised to give up on all thoughts of continuing his journey. They told him that the land extended still a long way in the direction aforesaid, after which it ran directly west. At a length was cut by the great water from north to south. One of them added that when he was young he knew a very old man who had seen that distant land before it was ate away by the great water, and when the great water was low, many rocks still appeared in those parts. Moneash Tape took their advice and returned home after an absence of 5 years. All right, so again, so because he's trying to prove so much that the Indians are Hebrews, right, or descendant from Israelites, and because they think and assume and they are indoctrinated to believe that the true Holy Land was over there in the Middle East, they have to try to explain how they came. So there's this, in this part of the book, he's really going on the Asia thing right here, right? But you know, that didn't prove anything. That story right there, if you guys read it, right, like what did that really prove? So he's talking about the Kachamika. Let's see what we can get. I told you we're gonna be belly flopping through the book. All right. Hope you guys enjoying it so far. Okay. The people of Siberia, okay. Kamchatka, Asia. Okay. Wow. The general character and established customs and habits of the Indians. We will now proceed to consider the general character of the people of whom we are treating as preliminary to inquiring into their customs and habits. It will be necessary to the full understanding of our subject to premise a few particulars. When America was the first discovered by Columbus, that's the hijack, it wasn't discovered. You can't discover a place where there's already millions of people, right? And his name wasn't Columbus. It was comparatively well peopled by some hundreds, if not thousands, millions of tribes of different, probably thousands of tribes of different nations. All right? Again, different nations, guys. Not everybody was Israelite. From the coast opposite Kamchatka to Hudson Bay, their numbers have not been known, neither can they be known at this day. They don't want to know, because they're going to see, how much people they really enslaved over here and reclassified. But to form some general idea of them, by reason of the subject, we will give the numbers of the nations that have come to our knowledge at different times, right? So here's some of the tribes, I guess, he's going to talk about. All right, you guys see? Algonquins, that's a language. So you got all these tribes here. You see that? All these different tribes. A lot of these tribes nobody's ever heard of. I know a lot of you have never heard of these tribes. Okay? And a lot of them, this is not their names. Like creeks, that's not their names. Alright, look at all these different tribes though. right? Everybody talks about the five civilized tribes or the Iroquois Confederacy, and that's it. Don't really know much. That's the problem, Israel. Israel, you're stuck on beliefs and not knowing. Israel, you're stuck on beliefs. You admitted it. I do believe in the Bering Strait theory. Theory. You believe in theories. That says it all. That's it. Do I have to give you the definition of a theory? No, I don't. Man, this is what people try to debate me with. Believes in theories. Out of this theory, out of Asia theory, out of Africa theory. But yeah, well, this is just a handful that he knows of, he says. So there's a lot more that are not in here because it would fill up a whole bunch of pages, right? That was only like 3 or 4 or 5 pages. So yeah, a lot of different tribes, right? Some nations divided and settled at distant from each other, and after many years the languages so changed as to form different dialects, as was in our days the case with the Erigas on the Ohio, who separated from the Tuscaroras and formed a distinct dialect in the course of a few years, and the Tuscaroras are coming from the East Coast. Here are 190 different nations, each having a king or saken over them, of whom we have some knowledge, though many of them are not known. What they must be, the number of nations of this continent, could they all be known? Although we cannot with any precision know the number of the nations on the arrival of Columbus, and much less the number of souls, yet we may, as a matter of curiosity, give the numbers of individual nations of late years as far as the fact can be ascertained, and here our labor will be greatly lessened by a late ingenious and well-written pamphlet entitled Discourse delivered before the New York Historical Society December 1811 by the Honorable David Clinton of the city of New York. To the labor of this gentleman we are greatly indebted for the substance of many of the following observations, as well as the elegant manner in which he has communicated so much information to the world. Kurimeo, what transatlantic slave trade? You mean they coming from Europe? That was the true transatlantic slave trade, or going into from America, not coming out of. So, yeah, no, you cannot search. They don't have no primary sources on their database there. Okay, guys, if you're new to my channel and you're coming and saying things that you're really not sure of, please catch up. Please catch up. What you mean transatlantic slave trade? You better be talking about the Indians being brought over there first and then the Europeans being brought back. Just saying, we're not. It comes to Romeo. You're talking about random stuff on a text. It has nothing to do with transatlantic false narratives. All right, let's stay on topic. I've seen you for years. So what do you mean you're transatlantic slave trade? What do you mean? I don't talk about transatlantic slave trade, man. You haven't been seeing me for years, man. Come on, man. Be real with guys. Be real with yourselves. If you watch a couple videos throughout the years, that doesn't mean you've been following me for years or that you exactly know what I'm saying, because you obviously don't. After they came out of Africa, look at him, hamster male. Come on, man. You ain't learning anything. And now I really know you haven't been watching me. Don't lie, man. I mean, you're just exposing yourself. Those Sephardic Jews doesn't mean they came out of Africa. None of those people, what you're saying, none of it's proven. You cannot prove any of those black Europeans came out of Africa, man. So let's not, yeah. Hey, don't just delete him. Time him out. We'll give him 24 hours to think about. Think about it. We're not blocking you. Just give him 24-hour timeout because he's just disrupting now and he's adding his Pan-African stuff. when we're not even talking about stuff like that, guys. This is what I'm trying to tell you. This is what I mean. You guys get distracted. I'm not talking to all of you. I'm talking about to the ones that do. You guys get distracted and start going on your own hijacks. He has no info if he's talking about they came from Africa before that. Tara, let's not entertain him. He has no sources for that. That's the facts. He has no sources for those people coming out of Africa before they came out of Spain. I've been looking for years. No worries. We're gonna get back to the reading. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure, because guys, I'm reading, and moderators, make sure just be respectful. If people are just going off on some other thing, just time them out. You don't have to even tell them anything. Just time them out. Yeah. All right. Hey, Josette Fryer, thank you. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the club, Kurimeo Club on YouTube. Welcome. A lot of perks coming. Thank you. Now, he says, Dupratz and his History of Louisiana, Volume 1, 107, 123, this ain't just theories, gives an account of the single nation of Paducas, lying west by northwest of the Missouri, in 1724, which may give a faint idea of the numbers originally inhabiting this vast continent. He says, the nation of the Paducas is very numerous, extends almost 200 leagues, and they have villages quite close to the Spaniards in New Mexico. They are not to be considered a wandering nation, though employed in hunting summer and winter. Page 121. Seeing that they have large villages consisting of a great number of cabins which contain very numerous families. These are permanent abodes from which 100 hunters set out at a time with their horses, bows, and good stock of arrows. The village where we were considered of 140 huts, containing about 800 warriors, 1,500 women, and at least 2,000 children. Some Paducas having 4 wives. Page 124. The natives of North America derive their origin from the same country, since at the bottom they all have the same manners and usages, and also the same manner of speaking and thinking. Mr. Jefferson, once President of the United States, in his notes on Virginia, has also given much useful information to the world on several important subjects relating to America, and among others to the number of Indians in that then dominion. Speaking of the Indian confederacy of the warriors, or rather nations, in that state and its neighborhood, called the Powhatan Confederacy, says it contained in point of territory, as he supposes, of their patrimonial country, about 300 miles in length and 100 in breadth, that there was about 1 inhabitant for every square mile, and the proportion of warriors to the whole number of inhabitants was as 3 in 10, making the number of souls about 30,000. Talking about Powhatan people, right? Some writers state that the number of their warriors at the first coming of the Europeans to Virginia to be 15,000, and their population at 50,000. Lahoutan says that each village contained about 14,000 souls, that is 1,500 that bore arms, 2,000 superannuated men, 4,000 women, 2,000 maids, and 4,500 children, from all which it is but a moderate estimate to suppose that there was 600,000 fighting men or warriors on this continent at his discovery. So this is what I'm saying. You think Europeans could just come here and just take over like that? It didn't just happen like that, guys. Hey, Veronica, that's totally false. Israel is not a religion. You're totally false on that, with all respect. Israel was Jacob and his sons. That's a family. What's your last name, Veronica? Whatever your last name is, it's like saying anybody can be that. just by becoming having a covenant with the family and just doing Passover and practicing all the family traditions. You can become. No, you're wrong with that. With all respect, Veronica, you're wrong with that. Guys, Israel's a family. It's a lineage. No matter what anybody says, it's very clear in the Torah what Israel, who Israel is. You guys don't read it, all right? I'm not here to preach and all that, but you guys don't read the scripture. I can tell a lot of you don't really read or pay attention to the scripture. It's a family. It's not a place. It's not a religion. You can definitely marry into, have offspring with, and your children will become, but it's not a religion. And it's not Israel, it's Yasharala. You're not going back far enough into the Paleo Hebrew, into the real way it's said. All right? In 1677, Colonel Kersey, an agent from Virginia, had a conference with the Five Nations at Albany. The number of warriors was estimated at that time in those nations at the following rate: Mohawks 300, Oneidas 200, Onondagos 350, Cayugas 300, Senecas 1,000, total 2,150, which make the population about 7,200. Bid Chambers' Political Annals. Smith, in his History of New York, says that in 1756 the number of fighting men were about 1,200. Douglas, in his History of Massachusetts, says that they were about 1,500 in 1760. So now he's going on about numbers, like, because again, people were trying to say the reason he's trying to prove that there was a population is because they come and say, well, there wasn't many people, it was very, very small, because they enslaved many of the Indians. They enslaved and reclassified, called them something else. So they shrunk the numbers, so you wouldn't think, oh yeah, there wasn't any Indians. Oh no, that land was empty. There was no Indians there. So he's going on about the numbers here. But pretty good, interesting information if you don't know the exact details of what people have written. Now it says here, but what are these to the southern Indians, and especially those of Mexico and Peru? I will give one example. Mons Lopez Duprat, in his History of Louisiana, written about the year 1730, assures us that the nation of the Natchez, from whom the town of that name on the Mississippi is called, were the most powerful nation in America. Volume 2, 146. They extend from the river Manchas or Iberville, which is about 50 leagues from the sea, to the river Wabash, which is about 460 leagues from the sea, and that they have 500 sakims in the nation. 500 sakims, chiefs, that the Chacas or Flatheads near the river Pacha Ogulas had 25,000 warriors, but in which number he supposes many were reckoned who had but a slight title to that name. All right, so it keeps going with the numbers. All right, he's trying to go over the numbers here. Remember, I've never written this book fully. I'm reading it with you right now, live. I'm trying to get to the interesting parts of it, right? I told you you're gonna belly flop. Hope you guys enjoying the reading so far, or at least, well, thank you for chilling with me on this Shabbat. Yeah. Okay, let's see what we got here. I know he's got to get to customs. Hold on. I got photographic reading memory, so yeah, I'm reading this really quickly, guys, just to see if I find anything interesting. Okay. So what he's going on in all these pages is why he thinks Deuteronomy 28 applies to the Indians, like the punishment, right? Says when Ahaz, king of Judah, had sinned against God, he delivered him into the hands of the king of Assyria. And he was also delivered into the hands of Pekah, king of Israel, who smote him with a great slaughter, and slew in Judah 120,000 in one day, who were all valiant men. And the children of Israel carried away captives of their brethren 200,000 women. So this was this happened. Why? And Most High tells you in Scripture, because they fell off. They started not keeping the code. So we know Deuteronomy 28. I got a whole video on that, an older video, where we broke down each curse and how it applied to all the American Indians only. Like it's not just one little curse from Deuteronomy, it's all of them. It's all of them. I am Tav, email and telegram, that's how you, or my Patreon, that's how you get in contact with me, or just, leave me your email. Okay, let's see. Okay. We do not mean to take up the silly and ridiculous stories published by many writers on this subject, who either had particular and often wicked ends to answer by their publications, or they founded their narratives on information received on the most transient acquaintance of a few hours with the vicious and worthless among the Indians along our frontiers, nor shall we trust to accounts related by ignorant traders who did not comprehend either the idiom of their language or the strong metaphorical and figurative mode of expressing themselves. This has led to the most false and absurd accounts of both Indian manners and language. To give one instance of this, though among the best of them, the following fact is extracted from an account given of the Mohawks in 1664 by a reverend gentleman who ought to have known better and must have had an education and known the principles of grammar. This nation has a very heavy language, and I find great difficulty in learning it so as to speak and preach to them fluently. There are no Christians who understand their language thoroughly. When I am among them, I ask them how things are called. One will tell me a word in the infinitive mode, another in the indicative, one in the first, another in the second person, one in the present, another in the past tense, so that I stand sometimes and look, but do not know how to put it down. And as they have their declensions and conjugations, so they have their increases like the Greeks, and I am sometimes as if I was distracted and cannot tell what to do. And there is no person to set me right. I asked the commissary of the Dutch West India Company that this meant, and he answered, what this meant, and he answered he did not know, but imagined they changed their language every 2 or 3 years. He had been connected with them 20 years. The Indians are perfect republicans. They will admit of no inequality among them, but what arises from age or great qualifications for either council or war. Although this is the case in peace, yet in war they observe great discipline and perfect subordination to their beloved man who carries the holy ark, to their officers who are appointed on account of the experience they have had of their prowess in war and good conduct in the management and surprising of an enemy, or saving their men by timely retreat. But this subordination ends with the campaign. All right. So real quick, yeah. So they were known to carry an ark when they went into battle and when they migrated and everything, and they were known to set it up in a tabernacle or tent in a holy place, wherever they set that ark up. Many accounts of this, of different Indian tribes and different primary sources, scholarly books. As the Israelites were divided into tribes and had a chief over them, and always marched under ensigns of some animal peculiar to each tribe, so the Indian nations are universally divided into tribes, under a Sakem or king, chosen by the people from the wisest and bravest among them. Again, chosen by the people. Again, chosen by the people among the wisest. Chosen, not I'm gonna run, oh, I'm gonna become king. I'm the king now. Oh, I'm president now just because. Oh, I'm the leader. I'll be the president. I'm the president of this non-profit tribe organization. I'm the leader, guys. Well, who voted you leader? Did a council of the people elect you as leader? See, that's the thing about today, guys. People just become leaders without anybody agreeing to it. The people make you a leader. It's not you yourself who makes yourself a leader. It's the people who decide that from your wisdom and your prudence. And from your bravery, right? From your wisdom and your bravery. He has neither influence nor distinction, but from his wisdom and prudence, he is assisted by a council of old, wise, and beloved men, as they call their priests and counselors, right? Priest kings. Nothing is determined of a public nature, but in this council, where everyone has an equal voice, the chief or sachem sits in the middle, and the council on each hand form in a semicircle, as the high priest of the Jews did in the Sanhedrin of that nation. Mr. Penn, when he first arrived in Pennsylvania, so Hebrew is a language, guys. When you say my family is a Hebrew, that's a language, that's not really a nation. And when you're talking about if you're an Israeli citizen, very different than when we're talking about an ancient Israelite, with all respect, okay? Don't take that personal. And if you have understand what I'm saying, I have a series called Don't Mention the Chazars. Go watch parts 1 and 2. That's what I'm talking about, okay? And then catch up with all these biblical Tribes of America series videos so you understand when we're talking about the ancient Israelites. Okay? Not a citizen of Israel. Very different. Very different. Again, with all respect. But you know, if you help Israel, the true Israelites, if you help them, if you will be blessed. You will be blessed. And you will gain entry, but not like how Veronica said. That's entry through the Most High. The Most High chooses that, not you. The Most High, the Great Spirit. Yeah. Hey, King, man, come on, man. Don't mention the Chazars, man. Come on, man. You already know about that. You know how they get, man. You know how they get it. Then all of a sudden, we got a restriction on the video, man. All of a sudden, man. Okay? Don't mention them. Thank you. Mr. Penn, when he first arrived in Pennsylvania in the year 1683 and made a treaty with them, makes the following observations. In a letter he then wrote to his friend in England, every king has his council, and that consists of old and wise men of his nation, which perhaps are 200 people. Nothing of moment is taken, be it war, peace, selling of land, or traffic, without advising with them. You see that? So the king ain't just making decisions on his own either. All right? He has a council of 200 people. Hey, should I do this? What do you guys think? Oh, hey, man, yeah, I think that's a good idea, Chief. Nothing of a moment is taken, right? You don't just make decisions out of the blue without consulting them. It is admirable to consider how powerful the chiefs are, and yet how they move by the breath of the people. They work for the people, not for themselves, guys. They for the tribe, they for the nation, not for themselves. I have had occasion to be in council with them upon treaties for land and to adjust the terms of trade. Their order is thus: the king sits in the middle of a half moon and has his council, the old and the wise, on each hand. Behind them, at a little distance, sit the young fry and the same figure. Having consulted and resolved their business, the king ordered one of them to speak to me. He came to me, and in the name of his king saluted me, then took me by hand and told me that he was ordered by his king to speak to me, and that now it was not he, but the king who spoke, because what he should say was the king's mind. During the time this person was speaking, Not a man of them was observed to whisper or smile. The old were grave, the young reverent in their deportment. They spoke little, but fervently and with elegance. He will deserve the name of wise, who outwits them in any treaty about a thing they understand. At every sentence they shout and say, Amen, in their way, in their own way. Mr. Smith, in his History of New Jersey, confirms this general statement. They are grave even to sadness upon any common and more so upon any serious occasions, observant of those in the company, and respectful to the aged, or of temper cool and deliberate, neither in haste to speak, but wait for a certainty that the person who had spoken before them had finished all he had to say. All right, they don't be speaking over each other. They seem to hold European vivacity and in contempt because they found such a as came among them apt to interrupt each other and frequently speak altogether. Their behavior in public councils was strictly decent and instructive. Every one in his turn was heard according to his rank of years of wisdom or services to his country. Not a word, whisper, or murmur was heard while any one spoke to commend or condemn. The younger ones were totally silent. Those denominated kings were Sakims, distinguished by their wisdom and good conduct. The respect paid them was voluntary and not exacted or looked for, nor the omission regarded. The Sakims directed in their councils and had their chief disposition of their lands. Every nation of Indians has certain customs which they observe in their public transactions with other nations, and in their private affairs among themselves, which is scandalous for any one among them not to observe. And these always draw after them either public or private resentment whenever they are broken. Although these customs may, in their detail, differ in one nation when compared with another, yet it is easy to discern that they have all had one origin. This is also apparent from every nation understanding them. Mr. Colden says, "They are great men, both Sakims and captains are generally poorer than the common people, for they affect to give away and distribute all the presents or plunder they get in their treaties or in war, or as to leave nothing to themselves. There is not a man in the ministry of the Five Nations of whom Mr. Colden was writing, who had gained his office otherwise than by merit. There is not the least salary or any sort of profit annexed to any office. All right, they ain't making money. I'm gonna go to president because it's a high paying job. Or I'm gonna start this tribe because I'm gonna make some money out in the side, for myself. You know, that don't happen with them. They don't got no salary to tempt the covetous or the sordid. But on the contrary, every unworthy action is attended with the forfeiture of their commission, for their authority is only the esteem of the people, and ceases the moment that esteem is lost. An old Mohawk Sakim in a poor blanket and a dirty shirt may seem issuing his orders with an arbitrary and authority as a Roman dictator. As every nation, as before observed, has its peculiar standard or symbol as an eagle, a bear, a wolf, or an otter, so has each tribe the like badge from which it is denominated. When they encamp on a march, they always cut the representation of their ensign or symbol on the trees. All right, listen, guys, this is important. This is when we did those the family crest symbols and broke it down. What goes down with what tribe of Israel. This is what they're talking about. The wolf, right? Benjamin, right? The ox, Ephraim. Is it? Yeah. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I actually got a pretty good book on my Patreon, Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage. Really good book there, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the Sakim of each tribe is a necessary party in all conferences and treaties, to which he affixes the mark of his tribe, as a corporation does that of the public seal. If you go from nation to nation, you will not find one who does not lineally distinguish himself by his respective family, okay? This is an American thing, guys. We've been doing that, about the teams and all that. I'm a Celtics, I'm a Knicks, the representation of your location, of your tribe, or your nation, or your place, right? That's where it all comes from. When they encamp on a mark, okay, I already got that, sorry. As the family or tribe of the eagle, panther, which is their lion, talking about jaguar, their panther, their jaguar, tiger, they know tigers in America, we're talking about jaguars, right? Buffalo, their ox or bull, and also the bear, deer, raccoon, etc., etc. So among the Jews was the lion of the tribe of Judah. So among the Israelites, right? Jews is a fake made up word. All right, we've gone over this, we've shown the history of it, the etymology and all that. So among the Israelites was the lion of the tribe of Judah. Dan was known by a serpent. He was also known as a horse. Issachar by an ass, and Benjamin by a wolf. But the Indians, as the Israelites, pay no religious respect for any of these animals or for any other whatever. So they're saying, but they don't worship them. Like other nations started worshiping the emblems and the idols or the animals. Hey, G Play, welcome back, man. Thank you. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. They reckon time after the manner of the Hebrews. We're talking about American Indians, guys. They divide the years into spring, summer, autumn, or the falling of the leaf and winter. Korah is their word for winter with the Cherokee Indians as it is with the Hebrews. They number the years by any of these 4 periods, for they have no name for a year, and they subdivide these and count by the year by the lunar months, or moons, like the Israelites, who also counted by the moons. They call the sun and moon by the same word, with the addition of day and night, as the day sun or moon, the night sun or moon. They count the day by 3 sensible differences of the sun, like the Hebrews, as the sun coming out, midday, and the sun is dead, or sunset. Midnight is halfway between the sun going in and coming out of the water, also by midnight and cock crowing. They begin their ecclesiastical year at the first appearance of the first new moon of the vernal equinox, according to the ecclesiastical year of Moses. They pay great regard to the first appearance of every new moon. They name the various seasons of the year from the planting and ripening of the fruits. The green-eared moon is the most beloved or sacred. The green-eared festival, right? This is Israelite traditions, guy. The first fruits is the corn. When the first fruits of the fruits become sanctified by being annually offered up, and from this period they count their beloved or holy things, all right? The Indians sacrificed their first fruits to the Great Spirit, just like the Israelites, guys. They didn't learn that from no people coming from Europe. They were already practicing that. The number and regular periods of the Indian public religious feasts, as will be seen hereafter, is a good historical proof that they counted time and observed weekly Sabbath long after their arrival on the American continent, as this is applicable to all nations, till the 70 years captivity commenced. According to Dr. Perdue, the Israelites had only numerical names for the solar and lunar months, except 2 called Abib and Etanaim. The former signifies green ear of corn, and the later robust and valiant. And by the first name, the Indians termed their Passover as an explicative. These 2 months were equinoctial. Abib, or the present Nisan of the Jews, was the 6th month of the civil and the first of the ecclesiastical year, answering to our March or April, and Etanaim, which began the civil year, was the 6th of the ecclesiastical, the same as our September or October, right? The harvest. Mr. Bartram said while he was at Atasi in the Creek Nation on a Sabbath day, he observed a great solemnity in the town and a remarkable silence and retiredness of the red inhabitants. Right? They were practicing the Shabbat. Few of them were to be seen. The doors of their dwellings were shut, and if a child chanced to stray out, it was quickly drawn indoors again. He asked the meaning of this, and was immediately answered that it is being the people's Sabbath. The Indians kept it religiously sacred to the Great Spirit, the writer of this being present at the Lord's Day, at the worship of 7 different nations who happened accidentally to be at the seat of government together. He was pleased at their orderly conduct. They were addressed by an old Sakim, apparently with great energy and address. An interpreter being present, he asked him to explain what the speaker had said. The interpreter answered that the substance of what he delivered was a warm representation of his audience, of the love of the Great Spirit had always manifested toward the Indians, or his chosen people, right? The Great Spirit, more than any other people, chosen people, that they were in a special manner under his government and immediate direction, that it was, therefore, the least return they could make for so much goodness, gratefully to acknowledge his favor and be obedient to his laws, to do his will, and to avoid everything that was evil and, of course, displeasing to him. Basically, keep the code, man. Keep the code. All right? Keep the code. All right? Put it in the chat if you remember. Keep the code. All right? Just before the services began, the writer of this observed an Indian standing at the window with the interpreter looking into a small field adjoining the house, where a great many white children were playing with the Indian children or European children, right? And making considerable noise. The Indian spoke much in earnest and seemed rather displeased. The interpreter answered him with great apparent interest. On being asked the subject of their conversation, he said the Indian was lamenting the sad state of those European children whom he called poor, destitute orphans. All right, the orphan babies. Their interpreter asked why he considered them orphans, for he believed it was not true. The Indian, with great earnestness, replied, "Is this not the day on which they told me the European people worship the Great Spirit? If so, surely those children, if they had parents or any person to take care of them, would not be suffered to be out there playing and making such a noise. No, no, they have lost their fathers and their mothers and have no one to take care of them." When the Indians travel, they always count the time by sleeps, which is a very ancient custom, and perhaps may have been derived from the Mosaic method of counting time, making the evening and the morning to be the first day. They have also an ancient custom of setting apart certain houses and towns as places of refuge to which a criminal and even a captive may fly and be saved from the avenger of blood, if he can but enter it, all right? So very important. We've gone over a lot of this information on different books. Yeah, the Indians had refuge towns, so places of refuge, just like the Israelites had places of refuge. You know, you can't go in there and go after them. They were protected in there. It was a law they followed. Mr. Barton says, we arrived at Alapachuela town in the Greek nation. This is esteemed the mother town, sacred to peace. No captives are put to death or human blood split here. The Cherokees, according to Adair, though now exceedingly corrupt, still observe the law of refuge so inviolably that they allow their beloved town to the privilege of prospecting a willful murderer, but they seldom allow him to return home to return home from it in safety. So he said they're corrupted now. The town of refuge called Choate is situated on a large stream of the Mississippi 5 miles above where Fort London formerly stood. Here, some years ago, a brave Englishman was protected after killing an Indian warrior in defense of his property. He told Adair that after some months' stay there, he intended returning to his home in the neighborhood, but the chief told him it would prove fatal to him. So he was obliged to stay there until he satisfied the friends of the deceased by presents to their full satisfaction. In the upper country of the Muskogee, there was an old beloved town called Coosa, now reduced to a small ruinous village, which is still a place of safety for those who kill undesignedly. All right, so Coosa, the town, was a place of refuge. In almost every Indian nation, there are several peaceable towns. They seem formerly to have been towns of refuge, for it is not within the memory of their oldest people that ever human blood was shed in them. although they often force persons from them and put them to death elsewhere. It may be thought improper here to say much of the warlike abilities and military knowledge of the Indians, as it is very popular, especially with Europeans, to despise them as warriors, by which means thousands of Europeans and Americans have lost their lives, but it may show that they are not so ignorant as strangers to them have taught them. A short account of their military conduct may elucidate our general subject. I assisted Mr. Colonel Smith, who lived along with them, and often fought against them, and what may be said on this occasion. However despised they are, perhaps as well versed in the art of that kind of war, calculated for their circumstances, and are as strict disciplinarians in it as any troops in Europe, and wherever opposed by not more than 2 or 3 to 1 Indian, they have been generally victorious or come off with small loss, while they have made their opponents repent their rashness and ignorance of war on their plan. And indeed, they were always victorious over European troops till sad experience taught foreign officers to pay more respect to the advice of American officers who, by adopting the Indian principles of war, knew how to meet them with advantage. It is not sufficient for an army to be well disciplined on their own principles, without considering those of the enemy they are to contend with. Braddock, Bouquet, and several others of great celebrity in their own country have been defeated or surprised by a comparatively small number of those inhabitants of the wilderness, and greatly suffered for despising what they thought untutored savages, and to save the honored and military character of those who commanded, have been led to give very false reports of the combats. The following fact will give force to these observations. So now they're talking about how the Indians warred, right? How the Indians warred. And they give different examples here. You like to go ahead and pause this and read it on your own. Okay, let me just get. So they're talking about how they go to war. Very interesting stuff here. Again, you can get the book on your own and read it. Make sure to read all these books, guys. Read all the stuff I don't read. Okay, let's see. It says here, when the Indians determine on war or hunting, they have stated preparatory religious ceremonies for purification, particularly by fasting, as the Israelites had. Hey, Jacqueline, what do you mean? Correct. What's going on? What's going on in the chat? You can express yourself all you want. That's not the problem, you know? That's not the problem. Anyways, Father Charleville gives an account of this custom in his time. In case of an intention of going to war, he who is to command does not commence the raising of soldiers till he has fasted several days, during which he is smeared with black, has no conversation with anyone, invokes by day and night his tutelar spirit, and above all is very careful to observe his dreams. The fast being over, he assembles his friends, and with a string of wampum in his hands, he speaks to them after this manner: Behold, the Great Spirit authorizes my sentiments, and inspires me with what I ought to do. The blood is now wiped away, his body is not covered, and I will acquit myself of this duty towards him. Mr. Mackenzie, in some measures, confirms this account, though among different nations, if the tribes feel themselves called upon to go to war, the elders convene the people in order to obtain the general opinion. If it be for war, the chief publishes his intentions to smoke in the sacred stem a pipe at a certain time. To this solemnity, meditation and fasting are required as preparatory ceremonials. When the people are thus assembled, and the meeting sanctified by the customs of smoking, This may be an imitation of the smoke of the incense offered on the altar of Jews, the chief and largest on the causes which have called them together, and the necessity of the measures proposed on the occasion. He then invites those who are willing to follow him to smote out of the sacred stem, which is considered a token of enrollment. A sacred feast then takes place, and after much ceremony, usual on the occasion, the chief, turning to the east, makes a speech to explain more fully the design of their meeting, then concludes with an acknowledgment for past mercies received and a prayer for the countenance of them from the Master of Life. He then sits down, and the whole company declares their approbation and thanks by uttering the word "Ho" in a very hoarse, guttural sound, being the third syllable of the beloved name, with an emphatic prolongation of the last letter. So he's talking about the ha, the ha. He's talking about the Jahawa, the Hawa, ha, the ho, Yahawa. The chief then takes up the pipe and holds it to the mouth of the officiating person, like a priest of the Jews with the incense, who after smoking 3 whiffs utters a short prayer, and then goes around with it from east to west, to every person present. The ceremony then being ended, he returns the company, thanks for their attendance, and wishes them, as well as the whole tribe, health and long life. Do not these practices remind the reader of the many directions in the Jewish ritual commanding the strict purification or sanctifying individuals about to undertake the great business or to enter on important offices? Isn't it the same? Adair, who had greater opportunities of knowing the real character of the Indians to the southward than any man that has ever written on the subject, gives the following account. Before the Indians go to war, they have many preparatory ceremonies of purification and fasting, like what is recorded of the Israelites. Right? This is from the 1700s of primary source. He lived with the Indians for 40 years. No matter what you think or what you're mad about, or this ain't about religion. All right? When the leader begins to beat up for volunteers, he goes 3 times round his dark winter house, contrary to the hunters. He goes 3 times round his dark winter house, contrary to the course of the sun, sounding the war whoop, singing the war song, and beating a drum. He addresses the crowd who come about him, and after much ceremony he proceeds to whoop again for the warriors to come and join him and sanctify themselves for success against a common enemy, according to their ancient religious law. A number soon join him in his winter house, where they live separate from all others and purify themselves for the space of 3 days and 3 nights, exclusive of the first broken day. All right. Wow. Hey, welcome. Guys, I was showing you guys 432, the Drop Radio, and also Natural by Law, the brother talking at the end. He's actually in the chat now. Make sure to go to his channel and subscribe as well. You want some drop? Go get the drop. Go get the drop. Very, very good drop. All right. Welcome. Wow. On each day, they observe a strict fast till sunset, watching the young men very narrowly, who have not been initiated in war titles, lest unusual hunger should attempt them to violate it, to the supposed danger of all their lives in the war by destroying the power of their purifying beloved psyche, or physique, which they drink plentifully during that time. They are such strict observers of their law of purification, and to things so essential in obtaining health and success in war, as not to allow the best beloved trader that lived among them knowingly to enter the beloved ground appropriated to the duty of being sanctified for war, much less to associate with them in the woods at such a time, though he is united with them in the same war design. All right, you hear that? Europeans can't just join in with them either if they didn't participate in the whole purification thing, right? No. They oblige him to walk and encamp separately by himself as an impure. You're impure, man. You didn't sanctify or purify yourself, man. dangerous animals till the leader had purified him, according to the usual time and method, with the consecrated things of the ark. With the Hebrews, the ark of Berith, the purifier, was a small wooden chest. It has already been shown in the first chapter, of 3 feet 9 inches in length, and 2 feet 3 inches broad, and 2 feet 3 inches in height, and overlaid with pure gold. The Indian ark is a very simple construction, and it is only the intention and application of it that makes it worthy of notice, for it is made with pieces of wood securely fastened together in the form of a square. The middle of 3 of the sides extend a little out, but the fourth side is flat, for the convenience of the person's back who carries it. This ark has a cover, and the whole is made impenetrably close with hickory splinters. It is about half the dimensions of the Jewish ark, and may properly be called the Hebrew ark imitated. The leader and a beloved waiter carry it by turns. It contains several consecrated vessels, made by beloved, superannuated women, and as such various antiquated forms, as would have puzzled Adam to have given significant names to each. These 2 carriers are purified longer than the rest, that the first may be fit to act in the religious office of a priest of war, and the other to carry the awful sacred ark, all the while they are engaged in the act of fighting. Alright, guys? They carried an ark to war, just like the Israelites. And this is just not somebody guessing. This is what people saw them doing. This is in the 1700s. And it came to pass when the ark set forward, that Moses said, Rise up, Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee. And when it rested, he said, Return, O Lord, unto thee many thousands of Israel. Numbers 10, 35, 36. But they presumed to go up unto the hilltop. Nevertheless, the ark of the covenant of the Lord and Moses departed not out of the camp. Then the Amalekites came down, and the Canaanites who dwelt on that hill, and smote them, and discomfited them, even unto Hormah. And David said unto them, Ye are the chief of the fathers of the Levites. Sanctify yourself, both ye and your brethren, that ye may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel into the place that I have prepared for it. All right? Do you guys see that verse in the Bible and what we just read Adir described the Indians doing? It's the exact same thing. Exact same thing. This is what we're trying to show you. This is more than just religion. When we're talking about the Torah, the Old Testament, it's not an old about it. Dodge the hijack. Don't call it Old Testament. It's the book of law. Torah is the story of the Israelites, their wars, their migrations, everything about them, their genealogy. That's what the Torah is. It's not religion. The Hetisu, or beloved waiter, feeds each of the warriors by an exact stated rule, giving them even the water they drink out of his own hands, lest by intemperance they should spoil the supposed communicative power of their holy things, and occasion fatal disasters to the war camp. They never place the ark on the ground, nor sit it on the bare earth, while they are carrying it against the enemy. On hilly ground, where stones are plenty, they place it on them. But on land, where stones are not to be had, they use short logs, always resting themselves in like manner. The former is a strong imitation of which the Jewish ark was placed, a stone rising 3 fingers breadth above the floor. They had strong faith in the power and holiness of their ark, as ever the Israelites had in theirs, ascribing the superior success of the party to their stricter adherence to the law than the other. This ark is deemed too sacred and dangerous to be touched, either by their own sanctified warriors or the spoiling enemy, that they will not touch it on any account. It is not to be meddled with by anyone but the war chieftain and his waiter, who are consecrated for the purpose under the penalty of incurring great evil, nor would the most inveterate enemy among their nations touch it in the woods for the same reason, which is agreeable to the religious opinion and customs of the Hebrews, representing the sacredness of their ark, as in the case of Uzzah and the Philistines. Just like that, just like that. A gentleman who was at the Ohio in the year 1756 assured the writer that he saw a stranger there, very importunate to view the inside of the Cherokee Ark, which was covered with a dressed deerskin and placed on a couple of short blocks of wood, and an Indian sentinel watched it, armed with a hickory bow and brass pointed barbed arrow, and he was faithful to his trust, for finding the stranger obtruding with apparent determination to pollute the supposed sacred vehicle, he drew his arrow to the head. All right, see what he did? And what it would have shot him through the body had he not suddenly withdrawn. You see, disrespecting the ark, yo, get back, yo. Pointing his bow right at his head. Get back, yo. You are not pure. Do not touch. The leader virtually acts the part of a priest of war, pro tempore, an imitation of the Israelites fighting under the divine military banner of old. The Indians will not cohabit with the women while they are out at war. They religiously abstain from every kind of intercourse, even with their own wives, for the space of 3 days and nights before they go to war. Listen, and so after they return home, because they are to sanctify themselves, so Joshua commanded the Israelites, all right? Just like Jehoshua, the real Jehoshua commanded the Israelites the night before they marched to sanctify themselves by washing their clothes, avoiding all impurities, and avoiding all matrimonial intercourse. All right, not tonight, babe. Not tonight, babe. I'm going to war tomorrow, babe. Don't worry, I'll be back. Most High willing. When the Indians return home victorious over an enemy, they sing the triumphal song, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. The Joe is the might, like mighty Hawa, but alone is dismissal. Hawa, ascribing the victory to him, like a religious custom of the Israelites, who were commanded always to attribute the success and war to Hawa and not to their swords and arrows. All right, they came back saying, Hawa, thank you, thank you. Just like Brother Khan Drop and Natural by Law was saying earlier, right? That breath, wow, that secure breath, wow. The Indian method of making peace carries the face of their great antiquity. When the applicants arrived near the town, they sent a messenger ahead to inform the enemy of their amicable intentions. He carries a swan's wing in his hand, painted with streaks of white clay, as an expressive emblem of his peaceful embassy. The next day, when they have made their friendly parade, by firing off their guns and whooping, they enter the beloved square. Their chief, who is ahead of the rest, is met by one of the old beloved men of the town. They approach each other in a bowing posture. The former says, Yo es le shera goma, replies Ja, oragre o angona. The Great Spirit is with me. I am come, my friend, in his name. The beloved man then grasps the stranger with both his hands around the wrist of the right hand, which holds some green branches, then again about the elbow, then about the arm, close to the shoulder, as near approach to the heart. Then he waves an eagle's tail over the head of the stranger, which is the strongest pledge of good faith. The writer of this has been a witness to this ceremony performed by an embassy from the Creek Nation with His Excellency General Washington, President of the United States in the year 1789. Huh? We're talking about Swarthy, so Swarthy, General Washington. Yeah. You already know. The common method of greeting one another is analogous with the above in a great manner. The host only says, Ishta chu, are you a friend? The guest replies, Orashio, I am come in the name of Oea or Yohewa, Hawa. of mighty Hawa. I come in the name of mighty Hawa. They are very loving to one another. If several came to a Christian's house, and the master of it gave to one of them victuals, and none to the rest, he would divide it into equal shares amongst his companions. If the Christian visited them, they would give them the first cut of their victuals. They never eat the hollow of the thigh of anything they kill. And if a Christian stranger came to one of their houses in their towns, he was received with the greatest hospitality, and the best of everything was set before him. And this was often repeated from house to house. Smith's History of New Jersey, page 130. Primary sources. The Indians are not only religiously attached to their tribe while living, but their bodies, and especially their bones, are the objects of their solicitous care after they are dead. Among the Mohawks, their funeral rites show they have some notion of future state of existence. They make a round hole in which the body can be placed upright, or upon its haunches, which after the body is placed in it, covered with timber to support the earth, which they lay over it, and therefore keep the body from being pressed. They then raise the earth in a round hill over it. They dress the corpse in all its finery, and put wampum and other things into the grave with it. The relatives will not suffer grass or any weed to grow on the grave, and frequently visit it with lamentations. Among the French Indians in Canada, as mentioned by Charlie Bull, as soon as the sick person expires, the house is filled with mournful cries, and this lasts on as long as the family are able to defray the expense, for they must keep open house all the time. In some nations, the relatives fast to the end of the funeral with tears and cries. They treat their visitors, praise the dead, and pass mutual compliments. In other nations, they hire women to weep who perform their duty punctually. They sing, they dance, they weep without ceasing, always keeping time. He has seen the relatives in distress, walking at a great pace, and put their hands on the heads of all they met, probably to invite them to share their grief. Those who have sought a resemblance between the Hebrews and the Americans have not failed to take particular notice of their manner of mourning, as several expressions in Scripture give room to such conjectures and to suppose them much alike to those in use with those people of God. Right? Indeed, do not these customs and practices seem to be derived from those of the Israelites, burying the dead in tombs hewn out of rocks, wherein were niches in which the dead were set in an upright posture, and often with much of their property buried with them? Josephus tells us that from King David's sepulchre, Hyrcanus, the Maccabean, took 3,000 talents, about 1,300 years after his death, to get rid of Antiochus, then besieging Jerusalem. All right, you hear what happened? The southern Indians, when any of their people die at home, wash and anoint the corpse, and soon bring it out of doors. For fear of pollution, they place it outside to the door in a sitting posture. They then carry it 3 times around the house, where she is to be interred. For sometimes they bury him in this dwelling house, and under his bed, the religious man of the deceased family in this procession goes before the corpse, saying each time in a solemn tone, "Ya," then "Ho" or "Ha," which is sung by all the procession. Again he strikes upon "He," which is also sung by the rest. Then all of them suddenly strike up the solemn chorus by saying "Wah, Wah." All right, that's the cure. Wah, which constitutes the divine essential name Yahuwah, Wah, Wah. In Choctaw Nation, they often sing Hallelujah or Allahwah, Hallelujah, Allahwah, intermixed with their lamentations. They put the corpse in the tomb in a sitting posture, with his face toward the east and his head anointed with bear's oil. He is dressed in the finest apparel, having his gun, pouch, and hickory bow, with a young panther skin full of arrows alongside of him, and every other useful thing he has been possessed of. The tomb is made firm and clean inside. They cover it with thick logs so as to bear several tiers of cypress bark, and then a quantity of clay over it. The graves of the dead are so sacred among the northern nations that to profane them, all right, and how many times did they do this? Is the greatest hostility that can be committed against a nation, and the greatest sign that they will come to no terms with them. The Indians imagine if a European was to be buried in the domestic tombs of their kindred, it would be highly criminal, and that his spirits would haunt the eaves of the house at night and cause misfortunes to their families. All right, misfortunes to their families. Okay, we're almost done here with this chapter. For the dismount, yeah. Let me see. I haven't even been checking how many people we got here. We got a good crowd today, guys. I didn't even know. Thank you. Thank you for being here. If anyone dies at a distance and they are not pursued by an enemy, they place the corpse on a scaffold, secured from the wild beasts and fowls of prey. When they imagine the flesh is consumed and the bones dried, they return to the place, bring them home, and inter them in a very solemn manner. The Hebrews, in like manner, carefully buried their dead, but on any accident, they gathered their bones and laid them in the tombs of their forefathers. Thus Jacob charged his sons and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim and Hittite. All right, where's that real location, huh? Here in the Americas. This was in Canaan. Oh yeah, it was here. Canaan was here. Canaan, huh? There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife, and there I buried Leah. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry my bones from hence. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, and the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel brought up out of Egypt, buried they in Shechem, as before mentioned in Joshua 24:32. The Jews buried near their cities and sometimes opposite to their houses, implying silent lesson of friendship, a caution to live well. They buried families together, but strangers apart by themselves. When an old Indian finds that it is probable that he must die, he sends for his friends, and with them collects his children and family around him. And then, with the greatest composure, he addresses them in the most affectionate manner, giving them his last counsel and his advising them to such conductas he thinks best for their interests. All right, conduct. So did the patriarchs of old, and the Indians seemed to follow their steps, and with much coolness as Jacob to his children when he was about to die. A very worthy clergyman, with whom the writer was well acquainted, and who had long preached to the Indians, informed him that many years ago, having preached in the morning to a considerable number of them, in the recess between the morning and afternoon services, news suddenly brought that the son, of an old Indian woman, one of the congregation then present, had fallen into the mill dam and was drowned. Immediately the disconsolate mother retired to some distance in deep distress and sat down on the ground. Her female friends soon followed her and placed themselves in like manner around her, in a circle, at a distance. They continued a considerable time in profound melancholy and silence, except now and then uttering a deep groan. All at once, the mother put in her hand on her mouth, fell with her face flat on the ground, her hand continuing on her mouth. This was followed in like manner by all the rest, when all cried out with the most melancholy and dismal yellings and groanings. Thus they continued with their hands on their mouths, and their mouths in the dust a considerable time. The men also retired to a distance from them, and went through the same ceremony, making the most dismal groanings and yellings. Need any be reminded of the Jewish customs on occasion of deep humiliation, as in Job 21 and 5? Mark me, and be astonished, and lay your hand on your mouth. 28 and 9. The princes refrained from talking, and laid their hands on their mouths. 40 and 44. Behold, I am vile. What I shall answer thee? I will lay my hand on my mouth. Micah 7 and 16. The nations shall see and be confounded. They shall lay their hands on their mouth. Lamentations 3 and 9. He putteth his mouth in the dust. If so be, there may be some hope. Proverbs 30 and 32. If thou hast evil, lay thy hand upon thy mouth. All right. That's why they were doing it, is what he's trying to point out. It's part of the tradition. Reminds me of growing up with the Cape Verdeans in Boston, and how they lamented in their funerals and stuff. It's what I pictured the Indians, like the screaming and the putting the hands in the mouth and the constant crying and lamenting for days. And we kind of do that here in Spanish country. We kind of do it in a Christian way, right, with the hijacks and all that. But it's a tradition that we're carrying from old. The Choctaw Indians hire mourners to magnify the merit and loss of the dead, and if their tears do not flow, their shrill voices will be heard to cry, which answers the solemn chorus much better. However, some of them have the art of shedding tears abundantly. Like crying out of will. I can't do that. I can't do that, but that is like an art, huh? Jeremiah 9:17-19. Thus said the Lord of hosts, thus said Yahweh, consider ye and call for the mourning women, that they may come, and send for cunning women, that they may come, for a voice of wailing is heard. By the Mosaic law, the servant brother was to raise up seed to the deceased brother, who should leave a widow childless. The Indian custom resembles this in considerable degree, all right? So yeah, a brother's to take on his sister-in-law once the brother dies, and help raise the kids and everything, and that's in Israelite laws, right? And the Indians did the same to a certain degree. A widow among the Indians is bound by a strict penal law or custom to mourn the death of her husband for the space of 3 years. But if it be known that the elder brother of her deceased husband has lain with her, she is afterwards exempt from the mourning law, has liberty to tie up her hair, anoint, and paint herself, which she could not otherwise do, under pain of being treated as an adulteress. All right? Who's saying we savages? The Indians formerly on the Juanita and Susquehanna rivers placed their dead on closed or covered cribs made for the purpose until the flesh consumed away. At the proper time they gathered the bones, scraped and washed them, and then buried them with great ceremony. There is a tribe called Nanticokes, the Nanticokes, all right, that on their removal from an old to a new town carried the bones of their ancestors with them. This also prevailed in particular cases among the Canadian Indians. An officer of the regular troops at Oswego, upward at 110 years ago, reported the following fact: a boy of one of the Western nations died at Oswego. The parents made a regular pile of split wood, laid the corpse upon it, and burned it. While the pile was burning, they stood gravely by and looked on, without any lamentations. But when it was burned down, they gathered up the bones, and with many tears put them into a box, and carried them away with them. The Indians are universally remarkable for a spirit of independence and freedom beyond all other people, and they generally consider death as far preferable to slavery. All right? They abhor covetousness, and to prevent it, they burn all the property of an Indian has at the time of his death, or put it with him in his grave. This necessarily tempts them to frugality and abstemiousness, right, in their manner of living. They are wholly ignorant of all kinds of mechanics, except so far as is pressed on them by necessity. They are free from hypocrisy or any forced civility or politeness, but their general conduct shows a frank and candid, but plain and blunt hospitality and kindness, with a degree of faithfulness in their dealings, except with their enemies, that often astonishes Europeans who, although their pretensions are so much higher, cannot, at least do not reach them in this particular. The great author of the divine legation of Moses, and treating of the government of the Israelites, both civil and religious, as, as necessarily united under one great head, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, states his subjects clearly and fully, and then says, but the great poet Voltaire has, indeed, had a different revelation. The pride of every individual among the Israelites says he is interested in believing that it was not their detestable policy, their ignorance of the arts, or their unpoliteness that destroyed them, but that it is God's anger. All right? It was God, judgment, Deuteronomy 24. That's why this is important, guys. You got to keep the code. Keep the code. Can I get a keep the code in the chat? It was God's anger that yet pursues them for their idolatries. This detestable policy, which I would not consider in the most obvious sense of the Mosaic institution, because that might tend to make the poet himself detestable, was a principle of independence. This ignorance in the arts prevented the entrance of luxury, and this unpoliteness hindered the practice of it. And yet parsimony, frugality, and a spirit of liberty, which naturally preserve other states, all tended in the idea of this wonderful politician, the Jews or Israelites. How surprisingly does this observation of Bishop Warburton apply in support of those untutored Indians, and point out from whence they must have drawn their principles of conduct. Their principles of conduct. All right. And we're going to end it here today, guys. That's already 2.5 hours. I didn't expect to even go on that long, but, you know, very interesting stuff we're reading. And it seems like it's about to get in even more interesting, you know, going over some more stuff, okay? The known religious rites and ceremonies of the Indians. We might pick this up on the next reading of this book. All right. We're going to end it right there. Just 1 second, guys. I know a lot of you probably, oh man, but don't worry, we'll be back. We want to make these videos viewable, right? We don't want to make them too long. We're trying to attract some of the people that have, you know, a hard time, you know, staying longer than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And YouTube videos. So I appreciate everybody that came through today. I appreciate all the people help me moderate the chat, all the members, all the donations that I received today. Thank you. Appreciate you guys, all the new members and all of my existing members, my existing patrons, my existing supporters for all these years, and all the brothers out there teaching, you know, giving the drop, getting deep with it, you know, all these years, you know, support them. Appreciate you, brother Natural by Law. Thank you, man, for coming through today. I appreciate you, man. Shout out to everybody. Yo, Matt Preacher, what we doing? Hit me up, man. Hit me up, man. It's still the Chabit, man. We still chilling. All right. Hey, guys, I really enjoyed reading this book today. I had read like a paragraph from it in my old videos. So, you know, it's good to get through these videos more in detail. So thank you for joining me in that, reading along with me, having the patience to hear me, even when I mess up or when I don't pronounce words right or whatever, you know. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right. I appreciate you. Yo, Olmec's in the house, right? Olmec 12 is in the house. We're going to go out with an Olmec 12 hit. Olmec 12 hit. Shout out to Olmec, my cousin, my brother from another mother. Shout out to Olmec, man. And so interesting genealogy we found, you know, in one of his lines, you know. And because we're dealing with that water, we're going to put on Wata. That's the name of this instrumental produced by Olmec 12. He's in the chat. Let him know. Thanks for the support, Olmec. Thanks for donating your music to help Kurimeo. We appreciate that. Hey, I'm gonna return, you know, your time to you guys. give you back your Shabbat before sundown, huh? Or it's probably already sundown for some of you. You know, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. Again, this is not religion. This is history. Know who you are. This is very important why we're doing this, guys. You gotta keep the code. That's why we fell love. That's why we fell love. Wow. Yeah. Water. Yo. Pull up.
Knowledge is power, but not when you mix the truth with lies. We're led astray with agendas, we gotta see between the lines. Too many years living like sheep, now awareness on the rise. Erasing my past with the sword and the pen, knife opened up my eyes. Oh Hawa, forgive my trespasses, and like Solomon, please make me wise. Determined to keep the code in disillusion, we gotta survive. Plant the seeds of truth and love, no more genocide. Ancestor calling, Yasharala, we must arise. Drop nation, decipher the code, Conduit has arrived. Red pill or blue pill, you decide. The sons of Abraham, the blood runs inside. These heathens hijack the truth, just wanna divide. Dracon slay hijacks, we never comply. Cesare Borgia, devils in disguise. It's raining fire, commanders in the skies. You see the fury in my eyes. Everyone like, who's this guy? The Jaguar Kurimeo, I roll with the most high. My people huetar in Chorotega, Sephardic, Moorish, and Tolteca. My queen is from Jamaica. 9 spiral can drop in Joseph, we all from Jacob. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. We're dreaming awake, we're dreaming awake. Passing our days, no breaks, stuck in this phase. No escape with truth in your face. We need to wake up before it's too late. Beware these snakes, mad people be fake. Pretend to be cool, they play you the fool. They say we are one, but their heart is just cruel. They live for the fame, the money, the game, but real love ain't the same. Corrupting your heart, don't let it go dark. Remember the laws, without them you lost. Say no to the drugs, the envy, the hate. Your spirit is strong, we're living too wrong. Was left for so long, the time has arrived. This feeling so right, we stand up and fight. With my Dracana ready to ride, exposing these lies. Together we rise, no woman, no cry. Time to rejoice, lift up your voice, let it be heard. In the beginning, the word, shaping and framing. On a mission, no more gaming. How we proclaiming frequency, this is more than a rap. The cons profess, no way to express. The vibration connects beyond the polar stretch. They made us forget, but energy transgressed beyond the visual cortex. Frequency manifests, the word became flesh. We're dreaming away, passing our days, no breaks, stuck in this phase. No escape, with truth in your face. We need to wake up before it's too late. Oh wow.
Much love, my people. Oh, wow.